Good afternoon, everyone, and aloha. I'm Dan Dennison, the Senior Communications Manager for the Hawaii Department of Land and Natural Resources, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Mauna Kea media team this afternoon. I want to open with a couple of opening remarks and some new information, and then we'll open up the pavement, I guess, to questions. First of all, no one should be keeping score about this situation here at Mauna Kea. This is not a game. We certainly respect everyone's right to peacefully protest, and we expect that to continue in the future. Yesterday, law enforcement showed great restraint, and anyone who characterizes what they did yesterday as a failure is just simply wrong. You noticed probably, and I think you have it in videotape and photographs, officers walking down the highway in formation. So you know they did not wear helmets, and normally they would have helmets on in a crowd control situation. They were asked not to wear helmets to show respect for the situation here. The crowd was so large yesterday that the decision was made to de-escalate, and that's the reason that they backed off and left the area. There is no intention whatsoever, as the governor has said over and over again, to use force against peaceful protesters. Law enforcement's top priority was and continues to be, but yesterday was to cure the disruption to the public caused by the closure of Saddle Road when protesters and cars blocked it. We want to emphasize again, and can't say it strongly enough, that the state's top priority is the safety and security of everyone here. You all have seen that in action every day, including yesterday, and again, we expect that to continue in the future. In that regard, we'd like to remind everyone on site here to not hinder or obstruct law enforcement or an order from a law enforcement officer. Both law enforcement and protesters have behaved in a very respectful manner, and again, I think you've recorded that and documented repeatedly. Many of the officers involved in yesterday's arrest and citations continue to provide safety and security here at the scene, and for that reason, even though a lot of the media have asked, they are unable to file their reports. So we will release an accurate list of names of the 34 individuals arrested, then cited as soon as those reports are filed. There continues to be a lot of misinformation on social media. For example, there were false claims yesterday that the state closed Saddle Road without any justification. As I explained just a moment ago, when there are people and vehicles obstructing the road, the decision was made to close for public safety and public safety alone. Finally, regarding Governor Ige's emergency proclamation of yesterday, we cannot and won't get into specifics for operational security reasons, but we can tell you that as a result of that proclamation, only authorized vehicles are allowed beyond where we're standing right now, and this includes no foot traffic up onto Mauna Kea. The emergency proclamation gives law enforcement increased flexibility and authority to restrict access, allowing law enforcement to improve its management of the entire area for public safety and security. And I'll take questions now.
To clarify, you're saying that the law enforcement backed off yesterday because the crowd is too large.
The question was, did law enforcement back off yesterday because the crowd was too large? Yes, that's correct, and they wanted to de-escalate the situation. The crowd was peaceful, so there was no reason to show force in that case.
Okay, but protest leaders did say that there was a deal made with law enforcement to clear the vehicles from Saddle Road in exchange for the withdrawal of the police officers.
I know that there was an agreement for the vehicles and the people to get out of the road, but whether that resulted in the decision to have law enforcement back off, I'm not aware of that, Mike.
As for 34 people were arrested?
34, I'm sorry, yes, we need to correct the number of people arrested. There were 33 kapuna arrested and one caregiver, and that's the reason for the discrepancy.
As for the road, there's also protesters are claiming that the state actually closed the road first, and that the state's claiming that the protesters were in the road first. So which are you saying?
As I said, Jonathan, that the state was justified in closing the road because it was a public safety hazard. That's the only reason the road was closed, because there were people and vehicles in the middle of the road, and they needed to get those out before they could reopen it. As you all have seen, there's people going 60, 65, 75 miles per hour down this road, and it's not a good place for people to be crossing or standing on the shoulder or anything like that.
So to clarify, it was not the protesters who closed the road?
The protesters did not close the road. Yeah. I mean, the road closed because of protesters, but the protesters didn't close the road. It closed because people, largely protesters, were in the middle of the road. Yes. Thank you.
Initially, Mauna Kea Access Road was going to be open to foot traffic for people that wanted to reach the summit, and now you're saying it is closed to foot traffic as well?
That's correct. The question was, is Mauna Kea Road closed to foot traffic? That is correct, and that was because of the emergency proclamation, which gave law enforcement greater authority and flexibility to take steps like this to prepare for the movement of construction equipment up the highway.
If yesterday was too many people, now there are reports of up to 800 people here today. What will you guys have to do to prepare for your next move?
Again, I think that's a law enforcement operational security question, and that's really up to them, and they're not going to reveal their next steps or tactics.
Governor Ige said that there was an overwhelming number of protesters, and they were frustrating legitimate law enforcement. He called the situation, it was creating a volatile situation. Is that still the same case today?
I think any time that you have a large number, whether it be 800 or 1,000 or 500, and they're peaceful, obviously, law enforcement is not going to get into a situation where they're using force. But that's the reason that the governor issued the emergency proclamation yesterday, to give law enforcement more authority and flexibility in the tactics and the strategies they use to try to get control of the situation and get this road open. And the goal still continues to be the movement of construction equipment up the mountain. When that's going to happen, no one knows at this point. They want to be sure that it's done peacefully, safely, and securely.
The governor said that more resources would be a part of this emergency proclamation. Does that include the National Guard?
The proclamation clearly states that a limited number of National Guards people will come in. Their role, as I understand it, will be to support law enforcement as unarmed National Guards people, and perhaps to join the convoy, to protect the convoy as it moves up the mountain.
Was the LRAD on site yesterday? And I mean, to many that are here, it seems alarming that the officers had batons and what looked like pepper spray. Can you talk to me about those things?
Okay, the question is, was LRAD on site? I understand, and I was actually back here, but I understand it was used as a public address system, which has been the intention all along. It must not be as powerful as everyone thinks, because I was back here and I couldn't hear it. So, and in terms of the devices that officers carry, those are things that they typically carry, and so I can't comment on, what those were intended to be used for, but there was no intention to use any sort of force on peaceful protesters.
Do you know why the officers that came in, the heavier presence of officers from HPD, did not have any badges on them?
I wasn't aware of that, so we'll have to check on that and get back to you.
If someone does attempt to walk up the mountain, or a mass group of people does, what will happen to them?
Again, I think that's an operational security question, and in a what if, I can't address that, Jonathan. If people walk up the mountain, that's a law enforcement decision as to how they're going to handle it.
So
But it's a citation.
The mountain is closed.
The mountain is closed, yes, to public access. Now, there are some other roads that people still have access to, but any access to Mauna Kea access road is closed currently.
I was just wanting to clarify, is it an arrestable offense or is it a citation?
Well, you can be arrested, but if you get a citation, that's technically an arrest. So they're kind of one and the same. Arrest, I think, means that you're physically taken into custody versus a citation, but the effect and the impact is exactly the same.
Native Hawaiian practitioners expressed concern that they cannot go up the Mauna because this road is closed, but in a meeting with Suzanne Case, the DLNR chair, she said, you can go up there as long as you walk up there. Is that the case?
That's not the case now. That was then. This is now. Because of the emergency proclamation and the additional authority that law enforcement has, they can restrict access to anyone and everyone, including practitioners. We respect Native Hawaiian practitioners' efforts to do that, but right now, for the safety and security of everyone, that's not going to happen.
Anyone up there left at all?
The only people that are up there are people from Mauna Kea Visitor Services who run Hale Pohaku, and certain folks that are associated with the operation here.
Well, prior to the governor's proclamation, many of the cultural practitioners and people here that go up to practice still weren't allowed. So, I mean, how does that work?
I'm not aware of that. Until yesterday, they could have walked up the mountain. In fact, law enforcement took a young lady who wanted to hike to the top of the mountain up on Monday. I happened to be coming down, and I gave her a ride back down. She was very thankful that she didn't have to walk that additional 16 miles round trip. But that was on Monday. Today we're at Thursday, and things have changed.
Yeah, I spoke to her. She was visiting from Phoenix.
Yes, you did,
She wasn't
Tucker.
a Hawaiian cultural practitioner, and there are many here, and every time anyone tried to walk up, I believe they were told to walk back down.
I don't have any information about that. I know just up the road, less than a half a mile, there were people as of yesterday that were up there, and they were told to come down, and they came down peacefully and by their own accord.
Dan, yesterday's law enforcement progression, it seemed like DLNR was first, and then maybe a couple hours later, police department rode in. Can you explain or elaborate on that strategy and why it rolled out that way?
All I can tell you is that officers from the DNR Division of Conservation and Resources Enforcement were the ones who effected the arrest yesterday. That was part of their plan. Any of you who observed it, I think, will testify that it was done very respectfully, very peacefully from both sides. There was a great deal of emotion involved for obvious reasons. But what transpired after that, again, that's a law enforcement tactic that I don't have any knowledge about.
Have you had any
Two more questions.
Have you had any direct contact with Governor Ige, and has he expressed any opinions, perhaps visiting the Mauna, or are you in contact with him on a regular basis, day to day?
I'm not in contact personally with the governor. I think members of the team from the governor's office are certainly in contact with the governor. I don't have any information about whether the governor or any other state officials plan to visit the site here. One more question, and if not,
Can you
yes,
confirm
sure, Michael.
Can you confirm the number of staff at Halepahaku right now?
I don't have any idea. Yeah, you'd have to call the visitor service and ask them. Yeah. Okay, thank you all, and we'll see you again tomorrow.